Have you figured out your niche? Are you helping adding value to other people's lives? Then you're in the right place. Welcome to Munira's Musings with your host, Munira Zahabi.
Greetings from Chicagoland. This is Munira from Munira's Musings. We are here live again with another guest that we are showcasing. We have a trauma coach in our midst today, Coach Jay. Hi, Coach Jay. Welcome to Munira's Musings.
Thank you so much, Munira, and thank you for having me on your show.
You are welcome. So we met on the podcasters group and we kind of connected and we said we want to be on each other's podcast. But Coach Jay here is a trauma expert and he helps people deal with trauma and take their lives to the next step. Now, how many of us haven't felt trauma in our lives? Because these days, especially now, we turn around and we hear bad news, right? So if you are here, welcome to our show. We are talking to Coach Jay and we are going to see how this is going to be a very interesting podcast, I can tell, because there's some things that has happened in our lives that we can talk about and just help people understand how to deal with trauma. And normally this show is about niches, but we also want to know how you found your niche. So without further ado, people want to know a little bit about yourself. So Coach Jay, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, thank you. Awesome. So let's see here. I am a intrapersonal relationship coach. And what that means is I help people elevate the relationship they have with themselves, because I always, one of my mottos is the relationship you have with yourself sets the tone for all other relationships around you. And I was doing that for a while until I went through a very, very serious betrayal with a family member, somebody that I grew up with, somebody that I went into business with, somebody that was in my wedding. It was a family member. They were like my brother. And I found out that that they were stealing from me. And that was such a profound, horrific betrayal that I didn't initially know how to deal with it. And when I went to confront and address and talk to my family member, who was my brother, almost a very close cousin, he tragically died in a car accident. So I couldn't even get any closure or questions answered. Because, trauma is trauma. Our body reacts to trauma. If you want to get technical, our body doesn't even know the difference between good trauma and bad trauma. Like if you were to win the lottery right now, your body would almost respond in a traumatic way, even though that's good anxiety. Our body doesn't distinguish between the two. So, I couldn't deal at all with this trauma at all. And but what I did was I went online and I was searching for some videos and some information to read. And I happened to come across a TEDx speaker that was talking about trauma, and what she had to say was quite interesting. And I actually reached out to her and I said, wow, I was very impressed with what you had to say. And it really rung true with me and hit a few core nerves. And she said, well, I actually run an online membership only community where I help people that have been traumatized. Is that something you'd like to come and take a look at? And I said, well, sure, that actually sounds like a great idea. So I went into the membership community and found a lot of great resources, and there was coaches there, and read a lot on trauma and betrayal trauma. And after a couple months, maybe 6 months or so, she said, I really think you'd be good at coaching and helping people that are traumatized come into the community. And I said, yeah, this does sound like something that I really would like to take advantage of. So I went through her course and became certified as a betrayal trauma practitioner. And that's when my coaching just skyrocketed. So I always say, I love what I do, and I really do. I love what I do. I have a passion for it. I can relate to a lot of people from the standpoint of having a traumatic childhood, plus a lot of trauma in my adulthood. Do I wish that there was no such thing as my position? Yes, I do, because I wish people didn't have to deal with this pain. I wish there was no such thing as trauma or betrayal trauma. But the sad fact is that there is, and I'm glad that I'm able to help people help themselves. I can't help anybody do anything. Somebody has to be ready, willing, wanting, interested in wanting to move forward. So I can only help people help themselves. So that's what I do. I do intrapersonal relationship coaching. I do betrayal trauma coaching. And the difference between betrayal trauma, say, and other types of trauma are just the personal nature of it all. If we lose a loved one, say, to death, that's traumatic, but it's not personal. We don't take it personal. When we get betrayed by a loved one, or could be our creator, ourselves, our boss, our neighbor, it doesn't matter. That has more of a personal feel to it. So there's a difference between betrayal trauma and other types of trauma. And like you said at the beginning of your opening, no one has been exempt from experiencing, unfortunately, trauma, whether it's the big T or the little t trauma, or even betrayal, whether it's the big B or the little b betrayal.
You know, that's so interesting. So I've had several coaches come through my show. You know, we've been doing this for 4 seasons now, but we've never had somebody who has taken trauma and made it, you know, helped people overcome it. Because sometimes when you say big T or small t, thing is, we feel we've all gone through betrayal when we were young and we were dating, and you know, we had somebody cheat on us, and you know, things have happened in our lives. All of us have gone through that, and very few people are the lucky ones who haven't felt and undergone this betrayal. But you were searching for answers because you didn't know how to talk to people. You didn't know how to get answers because your cousin passed away, your brother figure. And we all feel that way. Like there's so many things, like my mother, when I was very young, she passed away. So I feel that there were things that she wanted to tell me and I wanted to tell her, and now she's gone. And then 2 years ago, my husband passed away, and I don't know what else to tell him. What else should I have said? What else could I have done? Am I betrayed, or has he betrayed me? Because, you know, you take vows of till death do us apart, but actually you are never ready for till death do us apart. So how then do you help people overcome this T's, either the small t or the big T?
Yeah. Well, first of all, like I said, my hands are tied with anything I can do unless people are ready, willing, and wanting to transform. The first thing I do is have a conversation. I see what kind of stage or phase are they in. Are they in the stage, in the phase where they're bear hugging the toilet, vomiting, and in the fetal position, crying for days? Or are they in the stage, in the phase of, this happened years ago, it sucks, I feel a little stuck, or anywhere in between? And one of the things I like to do, before I went into coaching years ago, I was a special education teacher. And when you're a special education teacher, you give all of your students what's called an IEP, which is an individual education plan. And so what I did was I took that concept and I applied it to coaching. And what I've devised is an individual healing plan, an IHP. So what I do is I ask people, what is your love language? And if people don't know their love language, I give them a little test and we find out. Then I ask them, what's your attachment style? And if they don't know, I give them a little test and we find out. Then I ask them, where on the sibling totem pole are you? Are you a first child, a middle child, a young child? And the reason I do all of this individualized healing plan is because everybody can experience trauma, but trauma is going to hit everybody individually based on the person you are. based on the little things, your love language, your attachment style. I mean, even what hand you write with. I mean, we live in a right dominant society. So, people can feel already slightly excluded if they're left-handed, or people could have a love language of, hypothetically speaking, words of affirmation. I don't know if you're familiar with the love languages, or your listeners are, but let's just say somebody has a love language of words of affirmation where words really, really speak love to them. Well, if they had a partner betray them, they're going to respond differently if their partner just had a one-night fling, or if they found love letters written to the other person. So everybody's going to deal with something a little differently, and that's why I like to deal with the specific trauma that the person experienced based on the specific human being that they are.
That's awesome. So then that takes a lot of time, right, as a coach, because now you are giving them individualized plan, not only a plan, but the way you come out of it.
Yeah, most certainly. And I will say this, a lot of people, trauma is not necessarily what happens to us. It's our interpretation of it. So a lot of times it's just basically changing our internal dialogue, changing our narrative. For instance, I could talk to somebody who, okay, let's just say somebody who lost their mother, right? I can do my best to help somebody go through the grieving process or the trauma of losing their mother. One of the key core things to do is have them investigate, what did your mother represent to you? Did your mother represent love and safety and security and warmth? Okay, those are the things that you need to address. Not necessarily losing your mother, but the things that your mother represented to you. So, a lot of times it's just basically addressing that internal narrative, that internal dialogue. What did it mean to you when you found out your spouse was unfaithful? So again, trauma is not necessarily what happens to us, it's how we respond to it.
That's a very interesting way of putting it. But then some people don't understand this and then simmer in the sauce that they've created themselves. And just for years and years, it's like that tough chicken that you put in a pan and forget that the stove is on, and you just become so tough that you can't even bite in it. So why then do people simmer in their own sauce, one? And two, what happens if they become so tough? Do they feel other trauma, or what happens to these people?
So a couple of things, and that's a really good point and question that you brought up. A couple of things. Number one, a lot of people don't know how to move forward. That's just, they just simply don't know how. Some people don't know how, and they're not interested in working forward. Some people don't know how, but they're afraid. I always say that some people are afraid to fall, but other people are afraid to fly, because sometimes with other people, you get so comfortable simmering. And the reason why is because there are some benefits with that. Number one, we get to play victim. There's unfortunately, there's benefits with being a victim. We also get to have our story. All of us have a story. Oh, I'm this way because so-and-so did this to me, and poor me. And, we also get somebody to blame. Well, I can't be a better person because of A, B, C, and D. So we get these benefits, it's like, I will never trust and love again because of A, B, C, and D. One of the things that I say on that point is, we've all been burnt by our ovens, and it doesn't feel good. Doesn't feel good at all. We've been burnt sometimes to the point where sometimes we need ice, or maybe even, to go to the hospital. But you're not going to swear off cooking for the rest of your life, because then you're going to miss out on all that delicious food. So yes, we can be betrayed in life. We can be betrayed in love. But if you swear all that off, you're not going to experience all that delicious stuff again that life has to offer. So to answer your question, a lot of times people sit in that simmer because they don't know how to move forward, or they enjoy the benefits of staying simmering.
Okay, so I'm going to ask you to tell me two things that people should do if they've been have been through a trauma in life, and how to move forward. What are the two things that everybody else can do to move forward?
Okay, well, I just said one of them is when somebody was traumatized, don't look at the big picture of traumatized. Ask yourself, what did that trauma represent?
Okay.
What was that narrative that I've told myself, and challenge that narrative? Is there fact with that narrative? Is there truth and authenticity to that narrative? Or did we kind of switch and twitch that story to better fit and serve our needs of staying in the benefits of being stuck or simmering? That's number one. Number two, this is a very simple strategy. Take out some paper, pen and paper, and sit with the thought of going back to your childhood. And think of a time where you needed somebody the most. When did you need somebody the most? Was it when a parent passed away? Was it when you were on the playground and there was a bully there and nobody was rescuing you? Was it when you were being sexually violated? When did you need somebody the most? Then I want you to take the non-dominant hand that you write with, your non-dominant hand, and I want you to write your younger self a letter. Write a letter to your younger self from who you are today, and tell yourself, I was there when this happened. I understand you didn't have a voice then. I'm here to be your back, to be your guide, to be your voice. I got you. That's never going to happen again. We're in this together. Write your younger self a letter, and start that process of healing and closing so many of the open wounds that all of us still have from our childhood. Oh, and the reason you use your non-dominant hand is because we have grown so accustomed to filters. I'm presenting to you right now my coaching face. That's my filter. When I go to my spouse, I put on my spouse face. When I talk to my kids, I put on my kids face. If I go up to my preacher, pastor, whatever. So we all have, but when you write with your non-dominant hand, your brain, it's harder for your brain to filter. So then you can get to real core, raw honesty and authenticity. So do your best to write with your non-dominant hand.
Even though you've never held a pencil with it, you still start doing it.
Absolutely. And if you're on a computer, type with your non-dominant hand.
Okay. So type. I mean, not only just write, but you can do whatever you're doing for that particular exercise with your non-dominant hand, which mine
yes,
is
because if you write with your dominant hand, then our brain automatically puts filters on, and then we want to write the story that serves us, but rather we need to write the story that heals us.
So, like I told you, I lost my husband 2.5 years ago, almost 2 years ago. But now I had to make a very fast comeback, right? And sometimes society doesn't look at that as a good thing. I mean, she should be mourning and she's not. And so how do people overcome that stigma that is being placed by society and people around us?
Yeah, well, you bring up a good point, because there's a lot at play here. There's a lot at play. There's religion, there's culture, there's family dynamics. So this is a pretty loaded question, but I think the first thing that people have to do is be completely secure in themselves and continuously remind themselves, I know my relationship. I know I'm mourning the loss. I know I loved A, B, and C. I know that this person would want me to thrive. I know this person would want me to pursue my endeavors. I know this person would want me to achieve my aspirations. and go with that. Because listen, if we're, you know what I always say, if celebrities were to stop and address everybody that accused them of something in the tabloids, they wouldn't be celebrities. They wouldn't have the time to make any movies or sing any songs. If we're going to do what society expects us to do, you and I wouldn't be talking right now. You'd be in bed crying because that's what your family's expects you to do, or society wants you to constantly mourn the loss of your husband in the way they choose what's correct. Your mourning is your mourning. How you deal with your loss is how you deal with your loss. It's nobody's business. It's just like somebody's individual healing plan I was just talking about. It's your individual journey. And I think a lot of people, yes, there are people that judge how people mourn or how long they mourn. That's nobody's business but your own, period. And if somebody decides to go out and party and drink and let off some balloons, that's how they mourn. God bless them. If somebody decides to go to a grave site and get in the fetal position and cry for 3 days straight, God bless them. You can't judge how people mourn, and you can't care how people judge how people mourn.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I know this is so wonderful. And I know it's not a very flattering subject, right? Because people would think you guys are heartless. You're talking about this and you're laughing, but we have to laugh at trauma sometimes we just have to, because if we don't move forward. And that's what I've done. I've buried 2 husbands right now in my life. And, one was, I had a relationship with him for 33 years. The other one, I had a relationship, I was placed in his life to be a caretaker, a person who was just there for him. And that's how I'm looking at it now. I don't know what other people are looking at it, but I lived with him for that time and I took care of it. So this is my story and I'm sticking to it.
That's right.
But this is so wonderful because I know for a fact that you're going through some traumatic experience right now, and we mourn the loss of your father, and please accept our condolences for that.
Thank you.
And so, I mean, how have you made a comeback so fast? And because when I messaged you and you told me, you said, I'm going to do this. And I was like, oh, this is very new. How is he going to come back and do this? So, of course, our father is a very vital position in our life, and we don't want to lose that relationship. But you've come back, so I commend you for that. But how did you use the same strategy that you told us about, writing with the left hand? And
well, no. Well, first of all, I just lost my father. We just had a funeral 2 days ago, so this is all still fresh and new. So I will use some of my tactics, as needed in the future. But again, my area of niche, so to speak, is betrayal trauma. I don't necessarily look at like my father's death as a betrayal trauma. It is traumatic, don't get me wrong. So there's different things that I'll use and do. But one of the things that I think helps with death is looking at the many miracles. And I'll give you a little quick example of what I mean. My father went into the hospital very healthy 10 days ago. And we lost him within a matter of days. So we had no time to plan. We have family parties coming up in the near future he was a part of. So this is a shock to everyone. And because he went into the hospital with COVID, when he was hooked up to the ventilator, and we would go visit him, we couldn't even physically be with him. We had to be on the outside of a glass door. So here, we're outside of this room, and a glass door is separating us, and your father is lying there on a ventilator. He can hear you if you went in there. He could feel your touch if you went in there, but you couldn't do anything because you weren't allowed in the room. That was excruciating. But what we did do was when the nurses went in there to care for my father, we had them bring in a phone, and we talked, and we had my father hear our voices. And we also tried to FaceTime with my father. He couldn't respond to us. He couldn't see us, but there's no doubt he could hear us. So anyway, we were in the ICU, the intensive care unit conference room, and we were talking about, should we just eventually pull him off the tubes and let nature take its course? And if we do that, who should be in the room, because they did allow one person, to be all gowned up with the masks and stuff on. And my siblings asked me if I wanted to do that. And I said, I'd be happy to do that. I'd be happy no matter who wants to do it, but I'd be thrilled and honored to take that on. So as we're having this discussion, the doctor rushes in and says, your father's blood pressure is dropping significantly, rapidly. If you guys want to say your last goodbyes, now's the time to do it. It completely took us off guard because we're thinking we still had days. So we leave the conference room, we're running down to his room, and another doctor comes out of his room. So I just happened to ask the other doctor, how many people can go in to say goodbye? And that doctor said 2. So I quickly asked my sister, why don't you get your stuff on? Let's both go in there. And so we did. And, we put all of our gowns on and our masks, and we went into the room. And for the first time in 10 days, we were able to touch our dad. And we're a very spiritual family. So at the same time, it was completely unplanned. We started singing our gospel spiritual song, the same one at the same time. And we're just rubbing our father's cheek, and we're telling him we loved him, and we're telling him what a good dad he was, and to go be with his parents. And so bottom line, it was excruciating. It was painful. It was devastating. It's a loss. It's a big loss. But when I think to myself, you know what, I'm 47. I had 47 years with my dad. There's people that lose their dad at the age of 5, 6, and 7. I'm going to count my blessings. I had my dad for 47 years. There's people that went into the hospital with COVID who could only say goodbye over the phone. They weren't allowed in the room a year ago. I'm going to count my blessings that I was allowed in the room to touch my father, tell him I loved him one last time. I'm going to count my blessings that I have siblings that we all work together with to make funeral arrangements. There's a lot of single people out there, single children, who can't rely on their siblings. So, as grueling as it was, as excruciating as it was, and it was, I had to look at the many blessings that there was. And there was a lot of many blessings, a lot of many miracles that helped me throughout the whole process. And that's what I want to focus on.
I love the way you say that, because so many of us just sit in that again and simmer in what we don't have compared to what we do have. And the little blessings, the little tiny little blessings that we don't even think about, have been something that has propelled you forward. I was looking at your website, and you said even, I don't exactly know, but it's something to do with broken crayons also paint a good picture.
Yeah.
And
Well, I always say that, listen, we're all a little broken. We're all broken in some way. We just are. We come into this world on a clean slate, but the world breaks us. It just does. But my point is, even broken crayons create beautiful masterpieces. And if we decide to work on our healing, we too can create a beautiful life. One of the reasons I went into working with those that are traumatized is because, coming from a lot of childhood trauma and then trauma in my adult life, I've learned a lot of lessons. And if I can take some of those lessons that I learned and help people eradicate some of their suffering based on the pain that they were given, that's what I want to do. And let me just quickly qualify what I'm saying. If I were to tell you right now, let's just say I was to tell you, I want to end this interview because you have frog breath, right? Okay. So I just insulted you. I just put you down. I just gave you a certain amount of pain, right? By offending you. Okay. So I gave you pain, but your suffering is now up to you. Do you want to just work on that and let it roll off like dew on a leaf? Or are you going to spend the next 4 days simmering in anger? I can't believe Mr. J. He told me I have frog breath. The next time I talk to him, I'm going to give him a piece of my mind. I'm so upset right now. Well, you're causing your body suffering. So again, other people can give us pain, but it's up to us how long we want to suffer, what we want to suffer, what we do. So that's what I want to do, is take the lessons that I've learned from my trauma to help prevent the suffering people give themselves from the pain they were given.
I love that, because I've had family members who have simmered, and I call it simmering in their own sauce, because people who have hurt them live a normal life or don't even remember what they've said, but these people have held on to it for years and wouldn't let them go. And finally, when they realize it, it's just too late, right? So I like the way that you said that, is that people have to understand how to take this trauma and make it either their own or just let it go. And coming back to your broken crayons, I have 11 grandchildren. And
Wow.
when all of them get together, one of the big activities is lay a big piece of paper and let everybody color something. And then there are some little people who don't like a broken crayon. And then there are some little people who like, a full crayon. And so you have all sorts in the bunch. But then it is very awesome to see that one of the little ones who say, you can have this one. I just use the broken one because I can still paint with it. And it's always the little ones that come up with this plan. And so when I was listening, when I looked at your website and when you shared your bios with me, I was so amazed with that. Thank you so much, because now you've given us something to go forward in life with. And normally people don't talk about tragic and trauma, but what you've done for me today is put it all together and given me the permission to move on and not listen to other people, and listen to how I'm going to take what is coming to me in my life and then move on, because I don't want to feel like a victim anymore. A long time ago, somebody said, you're not the only one this has happened to. And I didn't think of it as, I thought he hurt me. And so now you're saying it again in a different way. So it makes sense on when people talk to you as well, how you take what they are telling you. Maybe it's the same message, but how it is given is also another way of taking it, right?
Absolutely. And also where you are in your journey of healing, and are you receptive to how many times were we told something in life and we didn't process it, but then all of a sudden we hear it another time and it sits with us? Well, because we're in a different stage and phase, it just goes to show you, at the funeral, I have 2 siblings. All 3 of us got up to honor the death of my father. One of us used a lot of humor. A lot of us used a lot of sadness. Some of us used some anger and fear. That just goes to show you can't judge how somebody mourns. Everybody deals with it differently. We all lost our father, but everybody deals with mourning and grief differently.
Thank you so much. For those of you who are still listening and still here, this has gone longer than our usual time, but it is interesting. It is something that we all need to take care of. And, go ahead, like, share, and subscribe to our channel. How do people find you, Coach Jay?
I think I have the simplest website. It's mrjrelationshipcoach.com. I have all my social medias there. I have a lot of free resources, including a YouTube channel where I upload a free weekly video. I call it my weekly dose of vitamin J. And I give all kinds of tips and techniques on aspects of life and betrayal and dating and divorce. So if you go right to mrjrelationshipcoach.com, people can find me there.
Thank you. And everybody, for those of you, please like, share, and subscribe to our channel. And let's meet again next week with another guest who is going to shed light in our lives with their perspective on their niches and how they got to the purpose that they are working towards. Until then, have a wonderful day and a wonderful week. Have a good week.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Munira's Musings with your host, Munira Zahabi. If you enjoyed our show, please share and subscribe to this channel. And for more content, please join our Facebook group.